This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.
Welcome back to the Lekker Rugby Pod. Last night we had a most chaotic instant reaction we've ever had with you and Harry at the stadium. So we thought let's do some proper review this time. Let's do a proper review. Harry, welcome back. I'm interested to know what your night was like.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to know that actually, but I'm here. I showed up for duty. It's a bit like in the press conference when a cheeky journalist asks one of those cringe questions, what would a young seer tell seer now? And RC kind of chipped in and said, I'll take that, drink less. And I think right now in most of the southwest of London, there's a lot of people like me waking up and saying the same thing. No, that's it. No more. Never touching alcohol again. Great times, great scenes. Wonderful to see us South Africans celebrate far from home with the reminders of home, whether it's song, food, color, memory. It was all on display last night in the bars and pubs, stretching from Hounslow to Richmond to Teddington to the old clubhouse of London Welsh. It was a bit like a friendly invasion, much like England once was by the Danes and Vikings, um, but most people sort of by the end say, and this is what you said to me because he'd never been around such a thing. He said no other country could do this or would do this. And I started thinking about it and I said, maybe the Irish when they were in France, but it's kind of different as well because that's just an hour flight, Ryanair, $50. I said, yeah, you're right. And he said also just the time people took to talk to each other, talk to us. First thing we did when we jumped out of the car, he was my driver. Was a guy come over and said, I love your pod, I love what you do, hugging him. And I think you got hugged more last night than he'd ever been hugged in his life.
As it was with you.
Yeah, a little bit. He bailed. He had to drive back, so he couldn't go hard. But I wanted him to see just the outdoors life, the funny characters, the weather-beaten faces, the gnarled fists, the ingenious tattoos, just the sights and sounds of a rugby braai post win, and a win it was. And we began this pod. We had several themes. I mean, besides the internal rivalries of Pretoria, Cape Town, Bulls, Stormers, we talked about how difficult it is to be the favorite and to own that crown and to win it when you're supposed to win and not use the crutch, almost the childlike, device of always being the underdog when you're not. It doesn't really work if your job is to go back to back to back, nor does it work if you're trying to retain a cup, nor does it work if you are clearly the best coach and you have some of the best players, more than any other team has the best players in the World 15. At some point you have to own it. So it's really nice for me to pitch a question to Sia, and a sort of a nothing question really was, what did you make adjustments at Oranges? And he took it on as a larger question of how do you make adjustments to having everything and still wanting more, to staying ahead of the pack. I've actually gone back and listened. It's exactly 2.5 minutes. I posted it on X as its own thing as well for everyone, because it's eerie, because he's looking right in my eyes because I'm literally talking to him and filming him. And for any aspiring journalists out there, and I'm not really a journalist, I just got to ask the first question because Zena gave me the mic, is look at someone and have a conversation with them in a press conference. Don't be looking at your notes and looking around. And I mean, just look at someone and they will talk to you. So Sia to me, he was talking to himself and talking to me. And I got a sense in that moment of, brother, I will run through a wall for you, man. I see it. I feel it. I feel what you've got. I feel that little abiding presence that goes through wars and thick and thin. And when you do something wrong, and maybe you do make a mistake in life, besides rugby, but you're still my teammate. Then running across Malcolm Marx, he almost whispers when he talks. He's such a quiet guy to play such a ferocious brand of rugby. And then Cobus Reinach is low key funny. I mean, very funny, actually. Very sly. He's got the nice little wit. I think his time in England has taught him a lot of, dry, what's it called? The dry English humor.
Right.
He's good.
Mm.
I would put him in front of the cameras more, actually. So I'm really happy he's going to be a stormer. No, it's a win is a win. You start out and it's ferocious to have these competitors, Felipe Contepomi bringing his side from whatever Checker had brought them and going even further. Never Say Die. Joe Schmidt, one of the finest coaches in the world, bringing the Wallabies to difficult to beat status. And then you have to play twice in New Zealand, which is never a good recipe for winning the Rugby Championship. You could almost correlate that with, no, you're not going to win that, And then coming away with not only a split, I would say coming away with the points differential that set up the win in the end because you had to win by points differential. So because of these ridiculous bonus points. So at that point, you just say it was basically the big win in Wellington and the big win, the Joel in Durban, that gives you the title.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the recovery from Ellis Park. It's the grind at Twickenham. We can talk about why that wasn't really as close as people are trying to make it seem, but it was still a grind in the sense that it was the most physical match of the 6 matches.
Interesting thing to me is some journalists saying that, the Springboks should have shared the spoils because they ended up in the same log points. But I mean, it's sort of poetic justice that a big part of that points difference came in Wellington. And that to me, sort of sums it up the way it was. And what you mean when you mentioned the 2 games in New Zealand, we also have to remember one of those games was at the Eden Park. I mean, it's not just another game. It was the game almost of the year that you especially flew to New Zealand for. I mean, put that into context with what the Springboks achieved this year.
Yeah, I always wanted to see us win at Eden Park. So it's unrequited. I have to return. Maybe it'll be a while. On the other hand, New Zealand probably in their minds are thinking we probably should play almost all of our tests at Eden Park, and sort of be more like England or Ireland. Just put the tests at the same place, and sell it out and be your big national stadium. No, so look, it's obviously absurd for anyone to argue that there's any asterisk behind the Rugby Championship win. The rules are the rules. But even if you threw out all these new fangled rules like bonus points and you just went with wins and then points differential, it wasn't that close. I mean, they would have had to have pulled off one of the great miracles of Bledisloe history to catch the box. So that's fair square. That's how the rules are set up. It's like playing tennis, and if I win, love 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6. You won more games than me, but I won 3 sets. That's how it works. And if it had been a different thing, we would have done a different thing. It's like it's like being up by a certain number of points with 8 minutes to go. The Boks knew what they had. They knew that the time was ticking. By the time the hooter goes, you're up by 9. I mean, sure, in the end, it's a 2-point win. But nobody was thinking during that final moments that it was going to go anything other than a Bok win. So I think, I think it's the science and the art of being a champion, of winning, that the All Blacks used to own. They used to have that mystique. They used to have, Sam Whitelock tendencies. They used to have Kieran Reid, Richie McCaw guys that on the field could drive, and they don't. And now you have Sia, Eben, Pieter-Steph, the quiet leader. You have guys in the back line, Damien Dialende, that just know how to put their team on their back and do quiet, hard work, donkey work. These guys know each other really well. There's so much love evident amongst them, towards them, around them. And there's very hard taskmasters, so people that want the more strict, you happy. Listen, if you were around them, you would see Felix Jones is cracking the whip. And even a guy like, individually, Don Human, just in his portfolio alone, just take that one thing, there's almost nothing he could do to improve besides make the referees respect the scrum again. But it's, you would just say, if you're doing performance review of Oom Dan op die plaas, he would say, everyone should go there. Like, put the whole team there for 6 weeks and they'll come back better men. But he's such a nice guy. He's exacting. He has his standards. He's not like Felix with that really hard edge where, people are kind of scared of him a little bit. Um, Don is sort of that guy who wants to hug everyone, and he's hands-on. He's a hands-on coach. Dwayne Vermeulen's impact, I think, is actually quite large on, let's just call him the Gees coach.
Yeah.
The pick-me-up coach. No, it's okay, Okay, forget that one. Now we go now, And I think him being around Jasper Wiese has been instrumental for Jasper's phenomenal performances, because they're very different guys. I think Dwayne was always a link player, great hands, doesn't drop the ball ever. He's looking for the offload. He's got tremendous footballing skills, Dwayne. And Jasper's more of a blunt force trauma object. I mean, he's a murder weapon. So I don't know. I think he's an intelligent player in the sense that he picks great moments, Jasper, to bulge, to build a salient behind enemy lines. So many times when the thing was not going correctly, it was going sideways. And Jasper, the highest tackler and highest carrier of the team, was just that fire plug, just let me just jam that hole. We begin again, reset. Cobus, the 8-9. I have a pod called the 8-9 combo. The 8 and the 9 was phenomenal. Jasper Cobus, that middle of the team, that cog, that seemed to really work when some of the edges, I'm not talking about Cheston Colby only, but I'm talking about Cheston Colby, I'm talking about Kane and Moody. We're doing some sort of mindless things, like, guys, we built a massive lead. This could have been a party. And then, sort of lost the plot a little bit. So I think, but you could look at that and say it was just, another game and Cheston Colby's a hero. So the team doesn't seem to fixate on errors, which is a South African failing and a flaw we have, is that we are hypercritical of ourselves, of each other, of your braai and how you did this food, how you did this, chop, and no, it's not the right way, and you must do this, you must do that, you must. And I feel like that vernacular is leaving the box, and it's a lot more about opportunities, taking your chance, expressing yourself. That's a term they use a lot around each other. You must express yourself. So it's still a must, but the must is more, Sasha, be you. Mani, make that, do it. Now, I think the theory, and here's the theory that I think Jerry, Tony, Felix, Rasi, Don, Stick, they all share, is if they can breed that sentiment, they can always draw it back if they need to. They can tighten up if they need to. But if you tight, you get that tightly squeezed arse, it's really hard to be loose. Like, be loose, and you haven't had any practice in it. So I think 2025, besides that, it was to retain the world ranking, to retain the Rugby Championship, and nick one, in New Zealand, which we did, and now go up to Paris and Dublin and dent them as well. If that carries out, but it's within the context of having more of a go, expressing yourself, playing what you see. The Cheston Colby try in Wellington, where you have Cobus snipe, Sia pick and go, Andre pick and fling, and then Cheston, juke. That's that's a quick score. So I'm building here to something that Hugh Griffin's been on. And even during the match, it's fascinating to see how people watch. On the one side, I had Tim Cocker, and then I was Mott's bodyguard, literally taking her to the loo, because at Twickenham, they don't even have a special place for you to go if you're an anchor woman for Super Sport. And then I had Hugh over here. So Tim takes notes, copious notes. When it's whistle, he's ready, because he literally has a notebook, and it's in cursive, and he writes pertinent moments. And then we conferred with each other, which was fun, because when you're writing notes, you don't see everything. And I don't write any notes. I just draw pictures and just shout shit and whatever. And I'm literally getting up and running around at
We
some
heard.
point because
We heard.
there was a huge opening next to me where the cameras just go auto, they're just fixed. So I had that whole sort of dance floor to go with, and behind it's all these Bok fans, and we're just high-fiving, we're headbutting, we're doing scrums, and so there was all that vibe, and so Mott, Tim, me, and Hugh is sort of the array, and then some I don't know, some lokish like British Sky BBC people who just looked upon us with amusement and bemusement. And when lone RG, Shane, the guy, is holding down the fort, so it's a great video of him singing the anthem. And he was just tight, looked like he was ready to play. So this scene was there. And what's interesting is Hugh had he paid for or secured the ref earphones. And so he was the only one of all of us that could discern what was happening. So then, like, Tim would say to Hugh what was going on, or he would tell me something. Or, on the scrums, for example, Tim would turn to me and say, what happened there? I'd tell him what I saw because, I'm somewhat of a scrum guy. And then, Mott's had to make notes for, post, game and all that. So it's very interesting to be in that sort of environment. And I found myself, it was interesting because the way Hugh watches a game is to take moments and tie them back to things that he was always interested in, a statistical theme or thread. And he was telling me that he really likes, he likes thinking about something before the game and then he watches it transpire. Whereas I think Tim Cocker is more of a, he came up in broadcasting. So he literally is reporting to you what is happening and what just happened in a very, good way, excellent way. Because not everyone can do that skill. It's a very difficult skill. And then I'm more like the vibe, but I'd like to focus on turning points and moments where I think something, and I'm somewhat of a predictive person. So I would tell you something's going to happen, then it would happen. You go, how do you know that? And I just say, well, I can feel that Jasper or Marx wants that ball and he's going to pop up 3 times in this movement. And sure enough, and he scores. And the body energy, I saw Marx was full of bristling, wild boar energy, gonna gore you, just, one of those moments. And that's funny because you see Marx after the game, and he's like, yeah, it's just a surreal moment and I'm very proud to be here. I mean, he's a fascinating character, actually. I don't know, what to get out of him, but how does he go from that to that? No, and interesting too, because you have all these guys right on top of you, behind you, throwing their stuff in. So I'm trying to draw moments, So I drew Marx's try, I drew Kanan Moody's, catch of the guy that turns into a red card. I tried to depict the scrum as a moving Panzer tank or something. And so everyone behind me like, draw this. No, Harry, draw that. They're like giving me ideas, draw Matera's unibrow, whatever, like really silly things. And so at some point I just drew them and gave them to various people, signed them off and said, here's your picture. So it was super fun. I don't think that I've had a more enjoyable beginning. The walk to the stadium was just classic. You're just in droves, mobs, almost like there's a revolution going on. Some, like, you missed the memo that there was a political revolution going on, and the Green Party was winning. It was just
Green and gold
unbelievable.
party. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is funny because I think we brought gold more into the equation now with the new Nike merchandise. So all the old school guys are, it's all green with a touch of gold. There's a lot more like gold. Like, that's what I did with my hat. I was like featuring that. But I saw a lot more of that. The young crowd was going more with the gold side of it, the yellow, really, because it's not even that gold. And even at Captain's Run, it's all yellowed out. But that whole, I'd say, 4 hours of morning drinking, breakfast beer, walking from pub A to pub B to the river, take a mad ferry over the Hammersmith ferry, a family-owned ferry where you can take your bike, yourself, a car, whatever, over the Thames, and then you go from pub C to D to F, and then maybe some Red Bull and some coffee.
Just now before the game.
Yeah. This is all morning time.
Okay. All
And
right.
then you maybe catch your snap a little bit, and then you kind of get into the Twickenham area, and then all the streets are long gone. Like there's no like for a mile radius around the stadium, there's no cars, there's no Uber, there's no taxis. It's just people. And even if you wanted to somehow bring an ambulance through or something, I don't know how you would do it. It's just packed to the gills with green and gold, and then the occasional blue and white, light blue, sky blue hoop. And along the way, there's purveyors of druvors and also they'll have weird like permutations of that. Like an English guy will open up a shop and sort of say boerewors, but he spells it Bore, like a bore, like boring.
Mm.
And he's just opened up because he wants to appeal to the crowd. And so you're stopping and the smell, my God, the smell of the meat. You're walking into this sort of
I was about to say smell
labyrinth.
when you talked about the
Yeah.
memories earlier. 'Cause, yeah.
Oh, it's wild. So by the time you rock up to the stadium, it's so unlike the Eden Park sterile, boring, bourgeois kind of middle class neighborhood. I mean, this is like you're walking through sight, smell, memory. The songs are playing, blaring, just nostalgic songs. So there's sing along going on. So when you get to the stadium, you're almost kind of disappointed. Like, no, I want to keep walking. I want to keep doing this. It's like an amusement
Mm.
park. Um, so then you get into the stadium and it's absolutely wonderful, wide open. The concourses are wide and there's just food everywhere around. If you want a beer, they give you a beer. It's like now. There's no wait. There's no pouring. I don't know. They're just
No,
ready
no.
to go.
You're South African,
Yeah.
aren't you?
Yeah, it's now. It's just now. So by the time you get in, everyone's like just bleed. I mean, there's red eyes, right? People are just a little bit drunk, and then it's time to get serious. And the serious part comes with anthems. And sort of long lead up, sorry, but I don't know if I've sung and been a part of a more emotional anthem. And I was trying to think about why,
Mm.
because surely it would be in Cape Town. Surely it would be in Pretoria.
Love this.
You know, the chords of the memory and the place where you are would convey more fire and emotion. But I found that far from home, and I remember this from Paris in the World Cup final and Japan and in other places where you've been far from home. I feel like there's something about Twickenham that we feel like we've taken it. I feel like we've claimed it
Mm.
and that it's one of our stadiums now. It's an adjunct. We're adding it. It's the fifth stadium. It's like we have these great stadiums, and then hey, and also Twickenham. It's ours. And there was confidence. It was beautifully sung. The audience the crowd took over.
I want to ask you this quickly before you go on. On TV, it fell completely flat. There was no atmosphere when they sang the anthem. I still said to my wife, "What a disappointment!" So you're saying in the stadium it was completely different?
Must have been a microphone issue
Mm.
because in the stadium we took over. There was no need for the music itself, and probably there was the feed of what they were catching.
Mm.
It was absolutely deafening and not a dry. I mean, for me, I was not dry-eyed. I looked around afterwards to see, how much of a sissy I was, and big men all everywhere crying, hugging each other. I think there was something very special about that moment, and it might have been, too emotional because we started out pretty badly. Um, and I think that there's some science around that, by the way, is theoretically, if the All Blacks didn't do the haka, they would do better. There's a thing in sports science about getting too hyped up,
Yeah.
and you need to remember what you're supposed to do. And so, certainly the Pumas came out better en route to scoring that first try and getting a card against us. So I would say that the whole lead up was really special, and then it was a proper game, as it should be. I think Rassi and the coaches did a great job of messaging that it was a semi-final and then a final. So if it's a final, then it's a final.
Mm.
There was not going to be a coronation, even though we're in England. It was not going to be a procession and the bugles and the fancy guys with the chariots and stuff. It was going to be a grind. It was going to be, my question to Rassi was, there was the dog shit game. Now there was this the dog fight. Cobus told me, I asked him an audio, I think I sent you the audio, what was the difference? It's hard to beat a team twice. It's actually really hard to beat a team really well and then beat them again because you feel like, all right, we got this. No matter how much you say you don't, you do. You think that. And they have the greatest motivation in elite sports is to not be embarrassed. The fear of embarrassment is massive in life. So all he said was it wasn't technical. It was that they came out to fight. It was a street fight. It was the most physical game of all the rounds, all the games of all the rounds of the 2025 Rugby Championship was the final, which is kind of what it should be like. The Pumas didn't want to hand it to us on a platter. They knew that they could deny us, and that would have made their year. It would have been amazing if they beat the Wallabies, the All Blacks, the Boks, and denied the Boks the championship and gave it
Ultimate
to the All
revenge for
Blacks.
last weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
I
I,
get it.
I kind of get it that it was never going to be. And I will say this as well: anyone who was in that walk from wherever they came from, I came from Richmond. Um, it was so windy, and when you were in the stadium, you could, and the TV doesn't ever convey this, but if you're down at the level, it doesn't feel like there's any wind. But the minute you kick the ball up, it's almost like two different drifts. Tim was saying this. He felt like there was a wind going this way at this level, and then it would switch. Started watching that as well, and I thought, yeah, you're right. I saw several times Sasha kicking a perfect kick in a normal day, and it was landing a good 10 meters off of where he wanted it to. And he's a high ball kicker. So adjustments like that, obviously a more experienced kicker like Andre Pollard knows how to keep it down under the wind. These are things you learn. But no, I just think it was a proper grind, and I think it's good to win different ways. I think if you wanted to bring a guy like Sasha along and show him what it's all about, you better have Ruan Nortia. Like you're good at all the technical stuff, Ruan. Are you good enough when it's this dark alley knife fight? The way that
He
the
looks like
Irish
such
beat
a
us.
gentle guy. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and I think that probably, I'm not saying that he would like anyone to get hurt, but probably the coaches like to see how you behave when it's for Ruan in the street fight and for Sasha in where nothing's really going easy. How do you handle that? Yeah.
You mentioned Tim Cocker a couple of times, so let's do a bit of a teaser here. Later this week, we'll do a proper Rugby Championship review with Tim Cocker. Looking forward to that. How did you manage that one? I mean, you sat next to the guy, you probably, put him in a headlock or something.
That is key. He likes our audience, and a lot of the audience is overlap, and I just think he likes the way we go about our business. We like the way he goes about his business, and even introducing him to different people and explaining just like little funny things, like nuances that he was missing. Um, I think he's grateful for that, and vice versa. I think he's a guy that I think has a deep knowledge of rugby. Sometimes when someone from a different rugby culture can look at your rugby culture and make an astute, it's like Hugh Griffin, our Hugh,
I was about
like
to
just
ask you.
a different perspective. It's really interesting. No, and so we're working on the timing. What we want to do, I think, with Tim is to do a proper rugby championship rundown, but not so much from the championship side, but from each team. So which team out of the Wallabies, the Pumas, and the All Blacks and the Springboks would have gained the most, regretted the most, maybe who found something, who was able to do rebuilding whilst doing well, which I guess is very difficult. This was the year for all the teams to do that because 2027, is its own thing. 2026 is a revamp, so everyone's going to have to scramble there. So for teams like the Pumas, this is sort of really critical. This year was the critical year to see if you could bring along young guys, and they did a good job. Springboks did better than the All Blacks did at introducing new players into the mix. So yeah, I think Tim is fascinated by South African rugby and South Africans in general, and it shows because when you're around people who are doing this thing we're doing, you can tell the people that are all about the glory, the prime time, and the glitz, and then you can tell that there's other people who just really enjoy the people themselves and they live in that moment. And so all the people that I was around that when I just listed, they're really like that. They're really into the moment. They're into the rugby. It exudes from them, and therefore they like each other. And it's not, no one's jealous, no one's elbowing each other out. You're actually helping each other. Even things like locating stuff, it's difficult in Twickenham to know where you're going to the loo, where you can go get a bottle of water, or like me bringing my Guinness in illegally. And also,
Splitting
they're
the
very clear
G.
about you. You must not take videos of, play from our zone. I'm like, what are they talking about? And so, here the rule follower was being really careful, and I was like, brother, you can do whatever you want. It's not like a police gonna come over and catch us, and it's stupid. Rugby is stupid about that. I don't know why you'd want to have a bunch of YouTube podcasting influencer guys and then say no, but don't take any videos of the experience. It's insane.
I love that picture that you sent me with you, Griffin Megaphone, and Harry Jones, Lekker Rugby Pot next to each other. I mean, that to me was a big moment. And actually, quite a nice thing that you're talking about, Tim, as well. What we're building here, Harry, is something different now. We're building a sort of alternative rugby universe almost, isn't it, to a degree, to the traditional stuff that people are seeing.
Yeah, and I mean, even like, people were like very drunk by the end of last night or this early this morning, and they would sort of stop you and go, "Nah, listen, Harry, nah, I'm telling you, you guys are doing it the right way. I don't even listen to this fucking TV and the radio. I'm just on you guys." And then and they start telling you the exact moments. I liked it when you did this. And then they're hugging you and saying, I love Megaphone. I love Lekker Rugby Pod. I'm like, you're going, okay, my life is complete. I
Yeah.
just need to take more videos
All
of
right.
that.
Let's go
But
retire
it was a
now.
bit loud. It was a bit loud. No, people stopping in the street. That's the issue. They actually say that they're done with the traditional broadcast. And I'll speak up now for Matt Pierce and Mott's. I think they are well aware of some of the limitations of television, and they're pushing against that. And they like us guys, and they want more of us. So, I think there's actually a marriage between those two. I don't think it's one or the other, but I do think that the old stale, you must be a retired Bok who talks about playing on the line or possession stats. It's a little bit boring, and people want to see different views, different ways. So whether it was, me being a cartoonist or Hugh every 5 minutes doing a little tiny snippet video where he would mention a specific facet, or Tim Cocker democratizing broadcast to where everyone is part of it. He's like interviewing people ad nauseum and has appetite for it for days. I think it's exhausting, but he sent me a message around 11:30 at night. He was still driving home. Like, it's like a lot of work. You see the things that Matt and Mots do to actually be ready for a game and then just be on time. And so I think it's fascinating to think of it less as a us versus them and more of a evolution and disruptive force inside what had become a bit of a stale format. The other thing is the players really like what we do, like they are fans of it. So at some point, the coaches and the higher ups kind of go, "Oh, wow, I didn't know," because they're fixated on the traditional, and then their players like our stuff better, So that's what they consume on social media, and they don't really have fixation on listening to Victor talking on Supersport or something.
Right. Listen, we've spent half an hour now talking about what happened before the game. Let's just talk about what happened at the game briefly. The first thing that I noticed that Rassie said, what was quite clear, and maybe the anthem had something to do with it, the fact that these players are not that used to this kind of pressure. And the fact that it just happened to be a final for the championship. Actually, when last did you have an opportunity to blood young people, young players, in this kind of pressure cooking environment? I mean, that's a golden opportunity, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's an opportunity, it's a privilege, it's required to do the job that the team has set out the mission. You have to be able to close out a game, be the favorites, win, go wire to wire, keep your number one ranking and still win. You have to rebuild whilst not losing. It's almost like doing construction on a highway. If you can shut down the whole road, the job is done in a week. If everyone has to keep going and you still do it, it takes 6 months. So, this is the calibration that the All Blacks are getting a little bit less right. They're not getting it wrong. They're just getting it a little bit less right. I think the Boks have successfully made it where if we were playing the French or the Irish tomorrow and we named Sasha as the starting 10, no one's going to blink an eyelid. Will he make mistakes? Yes. Will some of those mistakes be the mistakes of youth? Sure. But I don't think it's going to be this, firestorm like, oh my God, experimental lineup. They would just go, oh, so it's Cobus, Sasha. Sounds good.
Mm.
Is it Fassi or a Willemse at back? Doesn't matter. Is on the bench, are we seeing Jesse Creel, Andre Pollard? Well, fine. Like, I don't think there's a big firestorm around Mani versus Andre versus Sasha in reality. Will there always be some people that have to point at something and then they're silent when, Mani misses touch? Yeah, that's true. But I think we have grown beyond that and just go, how cool is it that we have three different weapons? I have a long knife, a short knife, and a medium knife. Okay. I mean, depends on what I'm doing in the bush. What kind of, guts am I gutting? Yeah. And then, and I think if the axe, maybe you see the value of the guys like Pieter-Steph du Toit, Jasper Wiese, Nortje, Marx, just grinders. It was a grinding kind of match. And in every case that I just mentioned, our guy was better than their guy. So Jasper Wiese up against the Pumas 8s, who are no joke. He's just phenomenal. And you start to do what ifs, like what if he hadn't been banned and he had been around? Could he have stabilized us at Ellis Park? Because there's a tremendous stabilizing force when you have a hard carrier who refuses to do something stupid and he always presents on time. The whole team goes, oh, okay, that's what we're doing. Okay, you do that 15 times, different game. The difference between Marcus Kremer, when he would get the ball in a bit of space versus Pieter-Steph. I mean, Pieter-Steph is quick. That boy can run. Whereas, big ugly Marcus Kremer, he's so slow. And so I think we're looking at some greatness there. Marx, du Toit, they are greats. I mean, like they belong in a greatness talk. And yeah, for sure, Marx and Marx's try scoring rate and his intelligence at the back of a maul and knowing when to split off, his intelligence in kinetic spaces of how I will bounce you, I will slide here, and I will score. That's actually really critically important in the Boks success. Pieter-Steph du Toit being the guy that you never have to motivate, you never have to scold, you never have to train, change. It's just a given, it's like you're standing on the beach and the waves keep coming and they just keep coming and they come. You're like, that's just the way the ocean is. Yeah, that's du Toit. He's just stick him in the line out and his worst game will be 7 out of 10. His best game will be 9 out of 10. And you have a hard time telling the difference between the 7 and the 9. It's just so good. So I think that was that kind of game. Did it start well? No. By the time you got to the halftime, though, did you kind of feel like, yeah, we've got this? I mean, I did. I'm not sure. I wasn't being Vengat. I was just thinking Argentina needed to be up by more if they were going to win that game. And they could have been, as Rassi freely admitted. Kanan Moody could have been on another day carded for that. On a word on PRD, he's an old school ref. So Hugh had the ref thing, and I would say, "What's this they saying?" And what is the ref saying? And he would say nothing. The ref doesn't talk. PRD hardly ever talks. He doesn't do the coaching method that Angus Gardner does, where he's like, adapt, space. Thank you. Good job, number 7. Oh, thank you. Number 7. Number 7. No, like he doesn't do any of that. He just hold up and runs away. Doesn't even go to the TMO. He calls it as he sees it. That's old school. That's what we all grew up with. And we were okay with that. And we didn't like the TMO and the stop. So why we're bitching about it the other way around. So I think that's interesting. But no, it just seemed like the Boks were calm and they were missing things by a meter here, a meter there. Sasha was probably going for too much at times and putting too much fizz on the ball. And even the wind was affecting even the ball out of hand. So you had to be very, I think, short. Probably shorter passes would have been better. Um, and that was ubiquitous across the back line. There were people taking too long a wind up in that wind, and there was a lot of bouncing balls. So what Sia said is they just kind of tightened the screws at Oranges. Just sort of let's like retool. Let's get a bit, just check our screws. Make sure we refasten them.
Missed one or two. Yeah.
One more turn, and then build. And interestingly, playing into the wind in the second half, and it went better. I know it wasn't a huge win, but still, we won the second half. And we won the second half probably pretty convincingly if you factor in that the 2 late tries came when the game was essentially out of reach. And the final try, of course, was post Hooters. So it was done. It was just window dressing. There was something that happened at Oranges that worked, and I think it had to do with the second pass, not the first and the third, but that second one. They were being a little more careful about it. It was a shorter one. It was like, make sure you see eyes to eyes before you give ball. And then even then, we had notable errors that down the stretch. I just think that a guy like Jasper Wiese will look back on this year and have some regrets. That silly headbutt.
That nose rub. It was a nose rub. Yeah.
The dummy headbutt. Yeah, it was just nothing. It was a big nothing, and that cost us. You could say that it cost us that we were stubborn, not replacing him with a proper 8. But be that as it may, that's a thing that I kept thinking about as I watched that game. Go, ooh man, he is just unstoppable, and also my friend Jan Lowe was talking about how the effect of being tackled back. So what he was saying is we were trying to divine the reasons for Evan Ruis, not the family issues, but the rugby issues. And so the carry upright Darbo told us about, but hands, being able to catch a ball when it's not perfectly thrown to you. That seems to be something that when you compare Ruis to Wiese catches a lot of balls that he has no right to. He's got some very soft hands for a hard man. And the other thing is when you get tackled back, when someone smashes you back, which can happen to anybody, right? It's a myth that you are always the winner of the gain line. When Jasper gets put on his arse, he gets a red arse, and the next one he carries, he takes it out on the next person, and so he has a bounce back factor. Whereas Jan was saying, it looks like to him, Ruis, we're watching the Stormers game. When he gets put back, then he's quiet for a couple of minutes. So I think that's interesting.
Okay.
I'll be looking for that because I think that guy like Felix Jones really believes in that animosity theory that you must carry angry.
That's interesting. I liked when you talked about. We've now covered all the coaches, by the way, in Friday's captains run video, and now as well what they did, what they're doing, and what they mean to the team. I want to just talk about a couple of players quickly. Firstly, what I noticed was when Moody was off the field, the Springboks went to a 7-man scrum and still dominated. But the guy who stood in the back line, was Pieter-Steph du Toit, and you mentioned how fast he is just now. That's an interesting thing for me, because there was a lot of talk this morning in the papers about a 4-4 bench going forward, maybe, rather than a 5-3 or a 6-2, we're going the other way. And then something that Wilco does, every time he comes onto the field, we get 1 or 2 or 3, in this instance, penalties, scrum penalties. That seems to be becoming a sort of a decisive factor.
Yeah, there's something really good about how Marx and Lowe, Wilco and Malcolm, they bind together really well. Again, sort of up in person, I could really see that, especially when they were scrummaging really near us, that is an incredibly, almost perfect bind. And what it does is it creates a solid unit. A lot of times hookers are more at play with their loose head because they're on attack, but the box can kind of attack you from the tight head, which is unusual. I mean, usually you're just trying to stay alive and keep your shoulders square and provide a base for, the loose head, the beast, the ox to attack you and split, get your collarbone implicated. And so I find that the two of them really are dynamic together as a scrum unit, and it gives opponents the absolute terrors. They cannot handle it. The other thing is we won one against the head, which I think is so rare, and I think so twice this season on the opponent's put in. We've won the so-called tight head scrum, where we went against the head. And in this case, the ball just remained unhooked. It sat in the channel, in the tunnel, and that push was so well timed that we just walked over the ball. It was clean as a whistle. You'd almost think that we were the ones that fed the ball. Yeah, so he's absolutely a main impact. Jan-Hendrik Wessels had all the mistakes of youth as well. So he had a little bit of over exuberance. And there were moments where you could look at across the pitch and for all the people who love youth, you could see that Kanan, Jan-Hendrik, Sasha were the guys that were doing things they didn't need to do. Were other people made mistakes that they were older? Of course. But they were mistakes that are kind of normal in the normal scheme of rugby, because rugby is not a game where you make no mistakes. But on choice, time, shape, scenario, it was there. You look at, and so I think to your earlier point, isn't it great that you get to expose them to finals rugby when it doesn't? I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter as
Or a
much.
World Cup final, yes.
Yeah.
Listen, lastly, frailties that Argentina exposed. I mean, we've sort of gone away from our very tight defense because we're attacking more, and we've talked about this before. You can score 3 tries, but we'll score 6. But it left us a bit more exposed at the ends, towards, at the edges, I mean. And we saw that a couple of times with Argentina. And I want to just I want you to talk to me about Argentina, the way they've come back from that huge hiding they took. It must have been such a dent to their pride. And it's a sign of a team well coached, but also a sign of the character of the team for coming back this well, away from home, and not being humiliated. You mentioned it earlier, but talk to me about what Argentina actually managed to do in this game.
Yeah, so the Pumas have not had good platforms to attack from. Their scrum has been very fragile, and their lineout has been more of a thief lineout than necessarily a base for their attacks. I mean, a lot of their tries haven't come from first phase off of a set piece. They've come from kick return, scramble, a ball on the floor, scraps. And what can happen in your team if you are good at that is you really don't ever panic, because at some point in the game the ball's going to be on the ground because someone dropped it and you have advantage, which teams like the Boks might sometimes go, let's just take the advantage because this will be off of a scrum. Whereas the Pumas know that's a very dangerous proposition for them, so they tend to value that ball and go. They just go. They're all running at full speed because they know the ball's going to come to them. The excellence at which they pass the ball at full speed is something to behold. Like in person, you can really see how much ground a guy like Delgui or Carreras is making up to get to the point where he can take the ball in stride. Something that our friend Sean is always bemoaning is the putting the ball on target in front of the runner, so that they're at full speed. You got a guy like Jesse Creel and Justin Colby up the flank at full speed. It's deadly, but too often we're catching behind us, or we have to stop a little bit. And so, the quality of that is something to behold, and it's clearly not just Contepomi. I mean, they've done that for a long time, but Contepomi has a lot of focus on that, and he was very good at that. So I think the skill of the actual delivery is part of what they did. They substituted some and didn't others, so there was some psychoanalytics going on there. Some people react differently to humiliation. Some people are seething with anger, and they will demand that the coach put them back out there. I was that kind of player. Like if someone bested me, I wanted to get them back. I was such a revenge-minded guy, and I would feel so disrespected if you didn't let me have my revenge. So if you have players like that, then you use them. If you have other players where they're demoralized and it dented their confidence, you don't want them on there, because they're going to bring you more of the same, defeatist, always me. And I think Contepomi just about got it right. Was it pretty fortunate that Justin Colby threw that ridiculous balloon? Yeah, I mean, Contepomi didn't plan that. And was it, yeah, so there was some fortuitous
Woody
things.
not getting a card?
Yeah, well, that probably hurt him. But Contepomi, what we can say Contepomi did is what Joe Schmidt has done, which is he's made his team harder to beat, which is the first job of every coach. It's not to win everything. Sometimes you don't have the players, but can we be harder to beat? So a week ago, he was thinking we were much too easy to beat, and it would have been very upsetting for him because he had tried to build a team that was the opposite, and he had done a really good job, be in every match, So like we had one of those thinkers too at Ellis Park, where it's so unusual that you just want to prove that it wasn't real. So yeah, I think he could have worked with a lot. I found it interesting that Razor used the Wellington match a lot to storyboard for his players and talk about, he would show clips of that match about how close things were, to sell the idea. Maybe it's bullshit, but sell the idea that it was closer than it seemed. And if we had just done this and this and this, but that's good. That's effective storyboarding. And for Gen Z or a 25-year-old guy, if you watch videos and you see, oh, wow, if all I had done there was the pullback, or if I had just, hit my touch, then I would have, the game would have been a 5-point game. So I think probably the Pumas did some of that. It was, guys, I know that wasn't good, but let me show you a few points where we do this, this, and this, and we in the game. So maybe that's all it was. Maybe that's all it was, where you believe that if you just play, I play 3% better and you play 2% worse, then suddenly that 5% margin, which can turn into a rout at this level, 5% margin can absolutely turn into a rout. If all my passes stick and my 50-50s, my money balls stick, suddenly they were the ones doing that. I found it an interesting game because we didn't have the ball very much, but we played in the right areas with the wind at our back. And then it just about came out equal. Like stats at the end, you would have been difficult if you blind statted it. You would have been difficult to pick which team was which.
Yeah.
But the two that might have attracted you to, and it's not good news, is turnovers lost. We've lost a lot of turnovers this year, and our turnover plus minus has been bad. And we can chalk that up to not having a proper fetcher. We can chalk that up to playing, wider rucks. But we've even tried to solve that by not having as many rucks. And the Springboks now don't build many rucks. This is one of Hugh Griffin's things to look at. And we're trying to score quick. So when you try to score quick because we don't really want to hold on to the ball that much, we don't believe in it, we don't want to resource the ruck this much, it's difficult to bring Vilko and Eben and all these guys all the way from here to there to there. When you score quick or try to score quick, you can also be scored on quickly. This is to your point. And we are leaking too much. And our tackle stats, we've talked about how tackle stats are not good, are not a great indicator, but they actually are too low. We're missing 1 out of every 5 tackles now. That's over the whole Rugby Championship. If you miss 1 out of every 5 tackles, your opponent always has hope. They always have a chance. They always have an ability. So I think those two stats, turnovers lost and falling off makeable tackles in areas where you want to tackle. I'm not talking about the funnel system where you shoot. I'm talking about actual man on man. I'm supposed to tackle you and I don't. We are doing that too much.
One last question I wanted to ask you, which is more to do with the stadium. There were 70,000 people there, but the top tier still looked like it was empty. I mean, on TV, was it really like that, or was it just an illusion kind of a thing?
I think it's an 82,000 person stadium. So yeah, the 12,000 ish would have been on the top tier. To be fair, that's not a great place to watch a game from. So maybe it's just that, it's very high. It's yeah. I mean, some stadiums are high, like Kings Park is high. So if you're in the cheap seats, you sometimes you go, I could have just stayed at home and watched this. No, look, 70,000 is good. 70,000 is a good crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just caught my attention. Okay, so that's the end of the Rugby Championship. No more Springboks for at least a month. So you and I are going to be focused on the URC a little bit. And Storm has shot the lights out last week. This week, not so much. Nearly for sure broke his arm. I don't know if you saw the message I sent you. That's a big setback. The Bulls are top of the log, but failing to convince. So lots of looking forward. And also remember Tim Cocker later this week. I'm excited about that one. Thanks, Harryman, and thank you for making time for us on a Sunday morning in London, nogal.
Yeah. Cheers, man.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.